Welcome to Next Gen Tech, Talent and Trends by Sequoia Connect, the space where we explore, with clarity and purpose, the real impact of talent, technology, and artificial intelligence on organizations.
We are Silva, and today we invite you to reflect with us on the decisions shaping the present and future of the IT industry.
Here we don't just discuss headhunting, AI, or tech consulting. We discuss what truly drives people: the need to grow, adapt, and lead.
This episode is for you if you're ready to take control of your career, lead change, or learn something new.
Let's get started. Okay, let's unpack this, because for this deep dive, we're really looking at something that, honestly, it feels like a completely hidden crisis in the business world right now.
Yeah, it really is. It's a massive issue.
Right. We are peering behind the curtain into the absolute chaos happening in talent acquisition. And specifically, we're talking about the incredibly high stakes tech and finance sectors.
The stakes there are just astronomical.
Exactly. And to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale, and I mean the actual financial devastation of the problem we're looking at today, I want to start by painting a very specific, a very real picture for you, the listener.
I think that's a great idea because it's a very vivid picture. And honestly, for anyone listening who has ever been in a leadership position at a growing company, it's probably going to induce a little bit of anxiety.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Extremely stressful. All right, so put yourself in this scenario. Imagine you have a chief technology officer, right, a CTO at a rapidly scaling fintech company.
Okay, setting the scene.
Right. And they have just popped the champagne.
Right.
Because they successfully secured Series B funding. It's a massive milestone. The team is cheering. The founders are thrilled.
It's a huge moment for any startup.
It is. But that celebration, I mean, it lasts for about 5 minutes before the crushing reality sets in. Because the mandate from the board of directors is crystal clear, and it is brutally aggressive.
Yeah, the honeymoon phase is over instantly.
Instantly. They have to build a robust, highly secure, scalable cloud infrastructure, and they have exactly 6 months to do it. The pressure is instantly dialed up to an 11.
And we need to pause right there, I think, to really analyze the psychological pressure, because Series B funding, it's not just a polite pat on the back from investors saying, good job, keep tinkering.
Right, it's not seed money anymore.
Exactly. It is a massive injection of capital that comes with uncompromising, ironclad expectations of scale. I mean, the investors are literally looking at their watches.
TikTok.
Yeah. Every single day that cloud infrastructure isn't built, deployed, and, actively securing transactions is a day they aren't capturing market share.
Wow. Yeah, that's a terrifying way to look at it.
It's a day the competition pulls ahead. So that CTO is feeling the kind of intense, sleep-depriving heat that forces incredibly quick decisions. The runway is short, and the burn rate is suddenly very, very high.
Exactly. The clock is ticking so loudly it's deafening. So under this crushing pressure, the talent acquisition director steps into the CTO's office. They need a light cloud architect to spearhead this entire 6-month operation.
Which is a massive role.
Massive. Make no mistake, this is arguably the single most critical hire they will make all year. If this person fails, the infrastructure fails, the product launch is delayed, and the board starts asking very uncomfortable questions about leadership.
And nobody wants those questions.
Definitely not. But because they're panicking, because the timeline is so incredibly tight, they make a fatal flaw. They hire a generic, high-volume recruitment agency to find this architect.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's the trap.
And look, I get it. At first, it seems like a brilliant, highly efficient move. I mean, within 2 weeks, just 14 days, the CTO's inbox chimes and they're flooded with 45 resumes.
45 resumes for a lead cloud architect in 2 weeks.
Yep. Sounds great, right?
When you hear that number, depending on your level of experience in tech hiring, you either think you've witnessed a literal miracle or your blood runs completely cold.
I'm guessing it's the latter.
Absolutely, because you know immediately that something has gone terribly systematically wrong.
Right. I mean, on paper, to that stressed-out, sleep-deprived CTO, it looks like massive progress. Look at all these options. We're moving fast. But this deep dive calls it out as what it really is: a complete illusion.
Or a total mirage.
Exactly. It's like a catastrophic waste of time. So let's break down the mechanics of why. What actually happens next is the technical screening phase. Out of those 45 candidates, how many do you think actually pass the rigorous technical screening required for a Series B fintech handling sensitive financial data?
0. Absolutely none of them.
None. Not a single one. It's like ordering a custom high-performance sports car, right? You need it to win a race next month. And the delivery truck backs up to your garage and drops off 45 random unverified steering wheels and exhaust pipes.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Thanks. And the delivery guy just says, well, you asked for car parts. Look how many I brought. That is not helpful. In fact, it's actively destructive.
It really is. It creates an enormous amount of negative work for you.
Exactly. Because now your senior engineers have to waste hours of their day sorting through the junk, interviewing people who don't even know the basics, just to realize none of it fits the engine.
Your analogy just hits a nail on the head. You are dealing with the illusion of speed versus actual tangible progress. A massive pile of unqualified resumes is honestly worse than no resumes at all because it actively drains your internal resources.
Right. Time is money.
Exactly. Your engineering managers are spending their time conducting first-round technical screens instead of writing code. But, and this is the really scary part, let's follow this scenario to its bitter end because the failure doesn't stop at the screening phase.
Oh, no. It gets so much worse. Let's say, by some miracle, one candidate finally does scrape by. They pass the technical screen. The CTO, who is just desperate to get a body in the seat and start the clock on the project, makes the hire.
They're just relieved to have someone.
Right. They breathe a massive sigh of relief. But 3 months later, halfway through the critical 6-month build, the entire thing implodes. The newly hired lead cloud architect walks into the office and resigns.
Wow. Halfway through.
Halfway. And why? It wasn't the code. It was a complete, irreconcilable cultural clash. They might have understood the cloud architecture perfectly, but their work style, their communication habits, their entire professional DNA was totally incompatible with the chaotic, agile, pivot-on-a-dime, high-stakes culture of a startup.
Yeah, that's so common.
They're used to a slow, bureaucratic corporate environment, and the startup chaos just broke them. And the fallout from this resignation, I mean, it is devastating.
It is a total operational collapse. I mean, think about the momentum you lose there. The project completely stalls. You are now 3 months into a 6-month deadline, and the person holding the blueprint just walked out the door.
It's a nightmare.
It is. The board is demanding an update, and you have to tell them you are essentially starting over from square one. And financially, the budget doesn't just take a hit, it hemorrhages.
Right. You've sunk so much into this.
Exactly. You've paid massive recruitment agency fees. You've paid 3 months of an executive level salary. You've paid the onboarding costs, the software licenses, the equipment, and you have absolutely zero usable infrastructure to show for it.
It's a pile of bills.
Yeah. The return on investment for that talent acquisition effort plummets deeply into the negative.
So what does this all mean? Like, why did this happen? Because to me, this is such a fascinating systemic failure. It's not an isolated incident. This is happening every single day in boardrooms across the world.
Every single day.
And there is a specific concept in our source material that really frames the core of this disaster. And it's this quote: "When the hunter does not understand the prey, the client pays the ultimate price."
When the hunter does not understand the prey, that right there is the fundamental thesis of the talent acquisition crisis.
It's so powerful.
Because the recruiter, the hunter, in this case, was tasked with capturing a highly specific, rare, and complex technical leader. But because they didn't understand the nuance of the role or the technical requirements or the cultural environment of the startup, they just blindly fired arrows into the dark.
Hoping to hit something.
Exactly. And they brought back whatever they hit. And the client, the CTO, the startup, the investors paid for that ignorance with their budget and their timeline.
It perfectly frames the stakes. So if we're going to fix this, we have to look at why that talent acquisition director made that fatal mistake in the first place. Like, why did they go to that specific hunter? And this brings us to what the text calls the provider labyrinth. And apparently, most companies, even brilliant tech companies, are walking into this maze completely blind.
They absolutely are. When companies reach that critical moment where they need to scale rapidly, they are suddenly faced with this overwhelmingly crowded, noisy market of talent providers.
Just a sea of options.
Yeah. Everyone is promising the world. Everyone is promising speed. And hiring managers rarely have a map to navigate it. The ecosystem is essentially divided into 3 distinct tiers of providers. And honestly, if you don't understand the structural operational differences between them, you are practically guaranteeing that fintech fiasco we just described.
Okay, let's break down those 3 tiers because I really want to play the role of the skeptical hiring manager here.
Okay, let's hear it.
So on one end of the labyrinth, you have the independent freelance recruiters. Now, I see the appeal. They are known for being incredibly agile. They're usually hungry. They work fast. And they are deeply embedded in specific local networks. So if I'm a startup, why not just use a freelancer?
Freelancers have their place, absolutely. They can be incredibly nimble for a one-off, highly localized hire. If you need, say, a mid-level developer in a specific city, a well-connected freelancer can probably find you a handful of decent candidates quickly.
Right.
But we have to look at the ceiling of their capabilities.
The infrastructure problem.
Exactly. When you are a scaling company that needs to build out entire technical teams simultaneously, say, an entire squad of developers, a QA team, and the architectural leadership, or if you are looking for highly specialized C-suite executives, agility alone is vastly insufficient.
They just can't keep up.
No. Independent freelancers typically lack the heavy-duty technological infrastructure, the proprietary assessment tools, and the expansive cross-border global network required to execute complex, multi-level, high-stakes searches simultaneously.
They're just one person.
Right. They're a one-person band, and you cannot hire a one-person band to perform a symphony. They simply do not have the operational bandwidth to vet 50 candidates across 3 time zones while running behavioral assessments.
Makes total sense. The scale just breaks them. So, the hiring manager realizes a freelancer is too small for their massive Series V needs. This leads them to the second tier, which our source explicitly labels as the most dangerous trap in the labyrinth.
The generic multi-service corporate agencies.
Yes. Now, I have to push back here. I see these massive agencies everywhere. They sponsor conferences, they have huge billboards, they have thousands of employees. If they are failing so spectacularly, if they're the ones delivering the 45 useless steering wheels, why are they the most common trap companies fall into? Like, why does the CTO pick up the phone when they call?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it comes entirely down to the psychology of a hiring manager in distress, combined with the illusion of scale.
The illusion of scale.
Right. These generic corporate agencies are massive machines. They have huge marketing budgets, incredibly polished sales pitches, and their primary value proposition is the one thing a stressed CTO desperately wants to hear: speed.
Fast results.
Yeah. When you are staring down a 6-month deadline, the promise of immediate volume is a siren song. It is incredibly seductive.
Don't worry, we have a database of 2 million candidates. We'll have resumes on your desk by Friday.
Precisely. But here is the critical, fatal flaw hidden inside that promise these entities operate strictly on a volume-driven, commoditized model. They are not headhunters in the true sense of the word. They are resume forwarders.
Resume forwarders. Ah, that is a brutal indictment.
It's brutal, but it is mechanically accurate when you look at the internal architecture of how these agencies function. In these generic high-volume firms, the internal key performance indicators, the KPIs that determine a recruiter's bonus, their promotion, their very job security, are tied almost exclusively to the sheer number of candidate submissions.
Wow. Okay, let's think about what that does to human behavior. If I'm a recruiter at one of the generic agencies and my boss tells me I have to submit 20 resumes by 5:00 p.m. on Friday or I don't get my bonus,
What do you do?
I'm not going to spend 4 hours doing a deep dive architectural interview with a candidate.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend 4 minutes hitting forward on any PDF that vaguely resembles the job description.
Exactly. The incentive structure completely discourages quality. If a recruiter is rewarded for volume, they will prioritize speed over strategic alignment every single time.
It's just human nature.
It is. It's human nature reacting to a broken corporate policy. They essentially turn your company's human capital investment into a volume game, like a lottery. They throw 50 darts at the board, hoping one miraculously hits the bullseye.
And leaving your engineering team to pull all the missed darts out of the wall.
Beautifully put, yes.
So you have the freelancer who is too small, and the generic corporate agency that is just playing a cynical numbers game with your critical infrastructure budget. That leaves the third tier in the labyrinth.
Yes.
The specialized architects.
Yes. The specialized architects. These are boutique, highly focused firms that fundamentally refuse to be everything to everyone. They don't hire for marketing. They don't hire for warehouse logistics. They operate strictly within highly complex, mathematically and technologically dense niche verticals, specifically technology, finance, and insurance.
Deep specialization.
Exactly. The entire philosophy here is a paradigm shift. Specialized headhunting is not about filling an empty seat to hit a weekly quota. It is about engineering a successful long-term integration into the client's operational ecosystem.
So choosing your partner in this labyrinth dictates whether you are making a calculated, engineered investment in your operational stability, or if you are just walking into a casino and pulling the lever on a slot machine.
That is the exact choice being made, and often unknowingly.
Wow. I want to zoom in on that second tier again, the generic agencies, because we really need to understand exactly how the slot machine works. We need to look at the day-to-day operations inside these massive companies. The source material calls it the resume forwarding epidemic.
A very fitting name.
Yeah. And the root of this epidemic comes down to the very DNA of the recruiters themselves. What exactly is going wrong on the floor of these agencies when they get a highly technical job requisite?
It comes down to a fundamental, insurmountable knowledge gap. In many traditional generic firms, the recruiters who are suddenly tasked with executing these highly complex technical and financial searches possess purely administrative, generalist, or even clinical recruiting backgrounds.
Wait, really?
Yes, they might have spent the last 3 years hiring administrative assistants or retail managers. They are not technologists, they are not finance experts, they have literally never written a line of code, and they have never built a risk model.
So if they don't know the difference between a server and a spreadsheet, how are they finding these candidates?
They rely entirely on keyword matching software. They are given a job description by the client, they look at the bullet points, they type a word like Java or cloud into their massive candidate database or into LinkedIn.
It's a blind searching.
Exactly. The software spits out a list of profiles that contain that specific string of text. The recruiter downloads the PDF, maybe slaps their agency's logo on top, and forwards it directly to the client's desk.
Okay, I had to use an analogy for this because it's so absurd. It's like trying to translate a complex, beautiful, nuanced novel from Russian to English by only looking up individual words in a dictionary.
Oh, that's a great way to think about it.
Right. Sure, you get the literal vocabulary. You know, this word means house and this word means sad, but you completely miss the grammar, the tone, the plot, the cultural subtext. The final translation is just pure gibberish. It makes no sense.
That is exactly what is happening, and the consequences are disastrous. Let's look at some specific, real-world examples of how this knowledge gap destroys the hiring process. Imagine a generic recruiter who cannot articulate the mechanical difference between React and Angular.
Let's actually explain that because I think a lot of non-technical hiring managers fall into this exact trap. Why does that matter so much?
It matters immensely. To a generic recruiter, React and Angular are just two words that often appear under the skills section of a front-end developer's resume. They view them as interchangeable.
Just web stuff.
Right. But mechanically, they are entirely different universes. React is a UI library. It gives developers a massive amount of freedom to build the architecture however they want. Angular is a full-fledged, highly opinionated framework developed by Google. It forces developers to build things in a very specific, rigid, structured way.
So if my startup have a massive, complex application built strictly in Angular, because we need that rigid structure, and the generic recruiter sees a developer who is a genius in React and forwards them to me,
you are going to have a disaster.
even if they're a genius.
Even then, because they are accustomed to total architectural freedom, if you force them into the rigid structure of Angular, they will be miserable, their productivity will plummet, they will clash with the existing engineering team, and they will likely quit. The keyword scanner just saw a JavaScript front end and made the match. It completely missed the architectural reality.
Wow. Okay, what about functional roles? Let's talk about the difference between a product owner and a Scrum Master.
Again, to a generic keyword scanner, both of these titles live in the agile software development bucket. They look the same on paper.
Right.
But practically, their brains have to operate in completely opposite directions. A product owner is entirely focused on the what and the why. They are looking at the market, talking to stakeholders, prioritizing features, and maximizing the return on investment of the product. They are business-facing.
Right. They're deciding what needs to be built to actually make money.
Exactly. A Scrum Master, however, is entirely focused on the how. They are a servant leader for the development team. They're focused on team dynamics, removing bottlenecks, facilitating meetings, and ensuring the agile methodology is being followed smoothly. They are process-facing.
So if a recruiter doesn't understand that nuance, they might send a highly empathetic, process-driven Scrum Master to go argue with cutthroat business stakeholders about product vision.
Yes.
It's setting them up for guaranteed failure.
Precisely. Or take the finance sector. This is where the stakes get truly astronomical. Imagine a generic agency trying to hire for a major bank, and the recruiter fundamentally does not understand the distinct risk modeling approaches of an actuary versus a commercial underwriter.
Okay, let's break that down too. How are they different?
Well, an actuary is essentially the macro architect of risk. They use highly advanced mathematics, statistics, and financial theory to study massive data sets and predict the financial impact of risk on a massive scale. They determine the overall pricing structures for entire lines of insurance.
The big picture.
Exactly. A commercial underwriter operates on the micro level. They take the rules and models built by the actuary, look at one specific individual business applying for coverage, and decide, based on these parameters, do we accept this specific risk and at what price?
So the actuary builds the casino, and the underwriter runs the individual blackjack table.
That is a brilliant way to put it. Now, if the person doing the hunting doesn't grasp these fundamental structural differences, they are physically and intellectually incapable of assessing the talent.
They're just guessing.
They become mere messengers. They just pass unverified, contextless profiles from a public job board directly to a hiring manager's desk. They add absolutely zero value to the strategic process.
But there is an even more dangerous consequence to this keyword trap. It's not just about failing to understand the technical skills or the mechanical differences in the roles. It's about completely omitting the single most critical predictor of long-term success.
Which is...
And we saw this in our opening fintech story. What did that lead cloud architect fail at? It wasn't the cloud, it wasn't the code, it was the culture.
Yes, the cultural fit, the invisible drivers of human behavior.
Yeah.
These are completely invisible to a keyword scanner. Let's take another scenario. Hiring a senior DevOps engineer. A generic recruiter gets the requirement, they run their search, they find a candidate, they look at the candidate's public GitHub repository, or rather, they just verify that the candidate has a GitHub with the right programming languages listed, and they pass them along.
Hey, they know Kubernetes. Hire them.
Exactly. And let's assume the candidate's code is absolutely impeccable. They might be a verified, top-tier technical genius. But if that specific engineer lacks the collaborative communication skills, the empathy, and the patience required to thrive in a highly cross-functional team, the hire will inevitably fail.
Because DevOps isn't just about writing deployment scripts. It's about bridging the gap between the software developers who want to push new code constantly and the IT operations team who want to keep the server stable.
Yes, it's a tightrope.
It requires massive amounts of diplomacy. If this genius engineer can't talk to the QA team without being condescending, if they alienate the product managers, suddenly your technical genius becomes a massive human bottleneck.
Exactly. They become toxic to the operational workflow. And this is exactly where this specialized headhunter brings in the ultimate antidote to the resume forwarding epidemic. They utilize what our source calls context orchestration.
Context orchestration. I love that phrase. It sounds like a superpower. It's the difference between a building inspector and an interior designer.
Oh, I like that. Explain.
Well, the keyword scanner, the building inspector, just checks to see if the house has pipes and wiring.
Yep.
The code works. Context orchestration, the interior designer checks to see if the family can actually live in the space, interact with each other, and thrive without tearing the walls down.
Yes.
So break down the mechanics of this superpower for us. What does it actually mean?
That analogy is perfect. Context orchestration means the recruiter is not a generalist. They are a highly calibrated specialist who possesses 3 distinct, non-negotiable pillars of expertise. First, deep technical fluency.
Meaning they actually understand the code?
Exactly. They don't just know the words React and Angular, they actually know why React is better than Angular for a specific, highly modular e-commerce project. They can have a peer-to-peer technical conversation with the candidate.
So they can't be fooled by someone just dropping buzzwords.
Exactly. Second pillar, business acumen. They understand exactly how this specific role impacts the hiring company's bottom line. They know that a delayed infrastructure build burns through venture capital. They understand the financial stakes of the hire.
Makes sense.
And the third pillar, which is perhaps the most crucial, psychological insight.
The behavioral science aspect.
Yes, this is the ability to evaluate, map, and accurately predict how a candidate will actually behave and perform under the specific, unique, and often stressful cultural pressures of your organization.
So it's not just asking, can you write this complex database query? It's asking, can you write this complex database query while the CEO is yelling about a missed deadline, the project requirements just changed for the 3rd time this week, and your junior developer just accidentally deleted the production database?
Precisely. A keyword scanner cannot test for resilience. It cannot test for adaptability under fire. It cannot test for mentorship capabilities or ego management. Only a specialized human operating with true context orchestration can uncover those invisible behavioral drivers and ensure the candidate won't shatter when the pressure hits.
This brings us to a really fascinating part of the deep dive.
Yeah.
Overcoming this keyword trap, breaking out of the resume forwarding epidemic, isn't just about trying harder or buying better AI screening tool.
No, it's much deeper than that.
It actually requires totally different methodologies depending on the industry's operational rhythm. There is an overarching rule presented here. You absolutely cannot use the same methodology to hire a call center agent and a chief financial officer.
It seems so incredibly obvious when stated like that. Don't hire a CFO the way you hire a teenager for a summer job. But you would be genuinely shocked at how many massive generic agencies try to force a single one-size-fits-all automated process onto every single search, regardless of the stakes.
Right, because their internal systems are built for volume, not nuance. So to combat this, the operational landscape is broken down into a specialization matrix, heavily contrasting two massive complex sectors. BFSI, which stands for banking, financial services, and insurance, and the technology sector.
Two very different beasts.
Let's start with BFSI. The stakes here are incredibly unique. What does the landscape actually look like when you were hunting in the elite finance and insurance world?
What's fascinating here is the sheer gravity of the roles. In BFSI, you are not just building a mobile app for a startup. You are managing the lifeblood of economies.
Huge responsibility.
Huge. The stakes are inextricably tied to massive risk management, strict, unforgiving regulatory adherence, and decades-long strategic foresight. Specialized headhunting in this space focuses sharply on critical non-tech functional roles and executive leadership. We are talking about finding senior actuaries, corporate underwriters, compliance directors, and chief risk officers.
And there is something really tricky about these candidates. They are almost exclusively passive.
Yes, very passive.
They are not sitting on job boards. They are not hitting easy apply on LinkedIn. They are currently employed, highly compensated, and likely very comfortable. So how do you even approach a chief risk officer at a major bank who isn't looking for a job? You can't just send them a cold, automated email saying, hey, want a new job.
No, you absolutely cannot. If you send a generic, automated template to a chief risk officer, they will delete it instantly, and you will have burned that bridge forever. Passive candidates at that executive level require an entirely different, highly sophisticated methodology. It requires high-stakes diplomacy.
So what is the first step?
You have to engage in sophisticated, relationship-driven outreach. You have to deeply understand their current career trajectory, the market position of their current employer, and you have to present an opportunity that solves a complex professional problem they might not even realize they have.
Wow, so you have to know them better than they know themselves.
Sometimes, yes. It requires incredibly discreet negotiation because these are small, highly connected, insular industries. A leaked rumor that a CRO is interviewing can crash a company's stock price.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought of that.
And crucially, it requires a deep, granular, mathematically precise understanding of market compensation dynamics.
Meaning you can't just offer them a 10% bump in base salary.
Exactly. You have to know the exact structure of their current unvested equity, their deferred bonuses, their pension structures, and exactly what financial levers you need to pull to make them move before you even pick up the phone to make the first introduction.
It sounds like international espionage combined with investment banking.
It really does.
Now let's contrast that fortress-like, highly deliberate, slow-moving environment of BFSI with the technology sector. The operational rhythm of tech demands something completely different. Extreme, high-velocity agility across all tiers.
Yes, the operational rhythm of the tech sector is hyper-accelerated. It is a completely different battlefield. In BFSI, you might take 6 months to quietly court and transition a single executive.
Right.
In tech, a company might suddenly secure funding and need to simultaneously hire operational IT staff to keep the legacy servers running today, a squad of mid-level, full-stack developers to build out a new product feature by next quarter, and a C-suite technology visionary to define the entire architectural roadmap for the next 5 years.
All at the same time.
All at the same time. And because of that extreme agility and volume, the requirement for absolute, rigorous technical vetting becomes paramount across every single tier. You cannot afford to slow down your 2-week sprint cycles because a generic agency sent you a mid-level developer who lied about their proficiency in a specific cloud framework.
Okay, so we've established that the generic trap is dangerous, that keyword scanners are useless gibberish, and that specialized context orchestration is mandatory for survival. But I want to play devil's advocate for a second.
Up for it.
I'm going to put my skeptical hiring manager hat firmly back on. Let's go back to that stressed-out CTO at the fintech startup. They are looking at their bleeding budget. They just got Series B, sure, but they have to make that money last.
Every penny counts.
Right. If specialized headhunting is so necessary, if it's the only way to guarantee success, why do companies consistently risk their operational stability by going to these generic agencies?
It comes down to the most powerful driving force in business, the budget. They are lured by the seductive mirage of cheap talent.
This raises an important question about the recruitment industry as a whole right now. We are currently facing a severe systemic degradation of service quality, and it is entirely driven by unfair competition and a race to the bottom.
A total race to the bottom.
You have these massive generic providers who are desperate to capture market share from the specialized boutiques. How do they do it? They can't compete on quality, so they offer unrealistically low, fundamentally non-competitive rates. They compete entirely on price.
We'll do it for half the fee of the specialized firm.
Right. And if I'm a scaling startup, isn't saving 50% on recruitment fees a genuinely smart business move? Every single dollar counts when you are trying to extend your runway. Why wouldn't I take the cheaper option?
Because it is the ultimate false economy. It is a terrifying financial illusion. The reality is that competing on price in talent acquisition means completely and totally sacrificing quality.
How so?
Think about the basic mathematics of the situation. If a massive agency is charging rock-bottom fees, how are they sustaining their enormous overhead? How are they paying for those billboards and conference sponsorships?
Volume. They have to churn out bodies. They have to close deals instantly to make the margins work.
Exactly. And because their profit margins per hire are so razor thin, they fundamentally cannot afford the infrastructure that actually protects the client. They cannot afford to hire expert, technically fluent recruiters. They cannot afford to spend hours conducting behavioral assessments.
They just don't have the time.
Right. There are no robust long-term guarantees if the candidate leaves after 2 months. There is no budget for deep investigative background checks. There is certainly no time for the complex technical validations we just discussed. Engaging these low-cost providers strips away every single layer of quality control and exposes the client to massive, unquantifiable operational risks.
Yeah.
There is a phrase that perfectly captures this. You are paying a discount rate for a massive liability.
Discount rate for a massive liability. That is the phrase. If you are a hiring manager listening to this, write that on a sticky note and put it on your monitor. You are not saving money. You are buying a ticking time bomb on clearance.
That's exactly what it is.
And the moment that unverified hire crashes your production server or alienates your best client, that saved recruitment fee evaporates entirely. True specialized headhunting operates on value-driven pricing fundamentals.
Yeah.
It recognizes the profound structural difference between high-volume contingency recruiting, which is essentially throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, and targeted, high-touch, guaranteed executive search.
And this issue of cheap talent, this race to the bottom, becomes exponentially more dangerous and complex when we look at the global talent market, which is a critical battleground right now for scaling tech companies.
Yes. Let's talk about global arbitrage, specifically the massive trend of leveraging nearshore engineering hubs in Mexico and the broader LATAM region. This is huge right now.
Massive.
It offers incredible strategic advantages for U.S. companies, right? You get perfect time zone alignment, you get significant cost efficiency without going offshore to India or Eastern Europe, and you tap into amazing, highly educated talent pools. But it introduces a very specific, very nuanced challenge that low-cost generic agencies completely fail at solving: the English language barrier.
This is perhaps the most glaring example of why the keyword trap and the cheap volume model fail so spectacularly. Let's look at how a generic low-cost agency evaluates English for a LATAM candidate. They will send the candidate a link to a standardized multiple-choice grammar test. The candidate fills in the blanks, gets an 85%, the software generates a certificate, and the generic recruiter stamps their profile as fluent in English and forwards it to the U.S. client.
But the reality of high-stakes business is not a multiple-choice grammar test. Filling in the blank on a worksheet doesn't mean you can function in a corporate environment.
Exactly. Passing a basic static grammar test is vastly functionally different from the chaotic reality of the job. Consider the actual scenarios this engineer will face. Can that LATAM engineer defend a complex, controversial technical architecture in fluid conversational English while being aggressively interrogated by non-technical stakeholders during a high-stakes board meeting?
That's a huge difference.
Can they pick up on the subtle, unstated nuances of frustration or hesitation in a U.S. client's voice during a Zoom call? Can they successfully negotiate a timeline pushback with a stressed, demanding product manager without causing offense?
That nuance is absolutely everything. If your lead nearshore developer freezes up when the VC starts asking rapid-fire questions because they cannot process the conversational English fast enough to formulate a technical defense, the entire project loses credibility.
Oh.
The board loses faith. It doesn't matter how good their code is if they can't communicate the value of it under pressure.
And low-cost generic agencies cannot evaluate this conversational nuance because it requires immense time, human interaction, and specific linguistic expertise they simply don't have in their budget.
Takes actual conversations.
Exactly. Specialized firms, however, refuse to rely on standardized tests. They conduct deep, immersive, scenario-based language and communication assessments. They intentionally simulate the pressure of a U.S. corporate environment to ensure totally frictionless global integration.
Which is the perfect transition into the final and frankly most exciting part of this deep dive. We've talked extensively about the failures, we've mapped the traps in the labyrinth, we've dismantled the false economy of cheap talent. Now let's look at the ultimate solution. How is this actually fixed?
The real core of it.
We are going to look at a masterclass in what the text calls the mechanics of true validation.
And this section begins with a definitive, uncompromising statement about the future of talent acquisition. The era of trusting a well-formatted PDF is over.
Rest in peace, the resume. It's done. Put it in the incinerator.
It has to be done. A resume is nothing more than a carefully curated marketing document. It tells you exactly what a person wants you to believe they have done, framed in the best possible light.
Right. Everyone's a hero on their resume.
Exactly. It is inherently biased and often exaggerated. To actually protect your business operations, your recruitment partner must move far beyond superficial keyword matching. They have to execute a rigorous, uncompromising validation methodology.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to know the how. How is this actually done? It starts by taking the traditional job description, that boring, bulleted list of requirements that every company uses, and throwing it in the trash right next to the resume.
Yes.
You replace it with something called a success profile.
A success profile shifts the entire paradigm of the search. Instead of looking backward at a candidate's past experience and hoping it translates to your company, you simulate future challenges.
Okay, so forward-looking.
Right. You essentially sit down with the hiring manager and ask, what is the absolute hardest, most stressful day this person will face in the next 12 months, and how can we mathematically test their reaction to that specific crisis right now before we hire them?
Okay, let's play this out. Let's walk through exactly how they simulate the future for different roles, starting with the heavy tech roles. A generic agency just sends a resume with Java written on it. What does the specialized firm do to validate a senior software engineer?
They administer highly controlled live coding environments. They don't sit across a table and ask, do you know Java? They say, here is a broken, highly complex piece of our actual code base. Fix it, optimize it, and explain your thought process out loud while we watch.
Oh, wow, that's intense.
Furthermore, they peer review the candidate's public GitHub repositories. They don't just check if it exists. Their internal SMEs, subject matter experts, actually read the commit history to see the cleanliness, the logic, and the evolution of their actual work over years.
And what about for true leadership, like the architects?
For senior architectural roles, live coding isn't enough. They conduct intense architectural design whiteboard sessions with subject matter experts. They force the candidate to map out a massive, scalable system architecture live on a board, and then the SMEs aggressively poke holes in it, forcing the candidate to defend their choices against actual technologists.
It's basically a highly intellectual, high-pressure gauntlet. You cannot fake your way through that.
No, you can't.
But what I absolutely love about these validation mechanics is that they acknowledge that validation is equally critical for functional roles that write absolutely zero code. Think about a product owner or a scrum master. How do you validate them? You can't ask them to write code.
Right.
The text provides a brilliant, highly stressful example, simulating a contentious backlog grooming session.
That is a phenomenal behavioral stress test. For a listener who might not be deep in the software development trenches, let's explain the environment. A backlog grooming session is the meeting where the engineering team and the business stakeholders decide what work to prioritize for the next 2 weeks. It can get incredibly heated.
Oh, it's a battleground. Let's role play this. I'm the stressed out lead developer.
Yeah.
I am screaming that we have massive technical debt. The servers are held together by duct tape. And when you don't spend the next 2 weeks fixing the back end, the whole app is going to crash.
Okay, I see it.
But the CEO is demanding that we launch a flashy new login feature by Friday for an investor demo. And the product owner candidate is caught right in the middle.
Exactly. So the specialized headhunter sets up this exact simulation. They bring in actors or internal SMEs to play the angry developer and the demanding CEO, and they watch the candidate.
Just to see what they do.
Yes. By simulating this contentious, argument-filled grooming session, the headhunter can evaluate the candidate's specific framework implementation strategies. How do they handle the conflict? Do they cave to the CEO and risk the servers? Do they alienate the developer? How do they negotiate a compromise? How do they maintain their authority and keep the meeting productive under intense emotional pressure?
It completely changes the hiring dynamic.
Right.
It's no longer a polite interview where you ask, tell me about a time you handled conflict, which anyone can rehearse a polished fake answer for. It's, you are into conflict right now. Handle it. You get to see their actual psychological reflexes.
Exactly.
And they do this for the massive stakes in BFSI too. The non-tech roles, the senior underwriters, the risk managers.
They absolutely do. For those BFSI roles, validation means stress testing their portfolio risk assessments. The headhunter will present the candidate with simulated, highly complex, high-pressure market scenarios.
Yeah.
They will say, okay, a sudden global economic downturn just hit this specific sector, and simultaneously, a massive new federal regulatory shift was just announced. Here's your portfolio. Show me your claims logic. Show me your regulatory compliance strategies in real time. How do you mitigate the damage?
It's basically running a massive financial war game before you hand them the keys to the bank vault.
Exactly. And the final overarching layer of validation, which applies to every single role we've discussed, is cultural. We discussed behavioral science earlier. Specialized headhunters use advanced behavioral science frameworks to map a candidate's core, invisible motivators against the hiring company's actual unfiltered daily environment.
Because every company claims they have a great culture on their careers page. But what does that actually mean on a Tuesday afternoon when the servers crash, the budget is cut, and everyone is panicked?
Right. It's about behavioral alignment in times of stress. When this candidate fails, and everyone fails eventually, do they handle it by taking extreme accountability and fixing the problem, or do they immediately point fingers and blame the QA team? How do they mentor junior staff? Are they patient and nurturing, or are they dismissive and arrogant? By systematically, mathematically validating both the hard skills, whether technical or functional, and these invisible cultural drivers, specialized headhunting completely transforms the nature of recruitment.
It really does.
It takes it from being a risky transactional gamble and turns it into a guaranteed, highly calibrated, long-term strategic partnership.
Okay, let's bring this full circle.
Right.
If we connect this all the way back to our fintech CTO from the very beginning of the deep dive,
Yeah.
the one who lost their mind, their timeline, and their budget over the lead cloud architect who quit after 3 months. Let's imagine an alternate reality.
Okay, let's rewrite it.
If that CTO had ignored the generic volume agency and utilized this exact validation methodology,
The outcome would have been entirely structurally different. The specialized firm would have started by creating a success profile that explicitly simulated the startup's chaotic, high-pressure environment. During the behavioral assessment and the cultural validation mapping, the headhunter would have discovered that this specific candidate required strict, rigid corporate structures and deeply despised sudden agile pivots.
so they would have known before day one.
Yes, the candidate would have failed the cultural validation phase immediately. The hire would never have been made, the CTO wouldn't have wasted 3 months of runway, and the startup would not have bled its budget dry.
It is such a stark, undeniable contrast. All right, to bring all of these incredible complex insights together, we have a really helpful synthesis framed as community questions.
Perfect.
Let's do a rapid-fire but deeply analytical review of the core themes we've covered today, using these exact questions as our guide. Consider these questions sourced straight from you, the listener, trying to make sense of this treacherous labyrinth. Let's hit question number 1. At the absolute core, what is the real functional difference between a generic agency and a specialized headhunter?
It fundamentally comes down to their core operational philosophy and their incentive structures. A generic agency relies entirely on high volume and speed. They are fundamentally resume forwarders.
Right, the keyword scanners.
Exactly. They rely on superficial keyword matches without any deep, meaningful vetting because their KPIs demand quantity over quality. They act merely as a transactional messenger.
And the specialized firm.
A specialized headhunter, however, acts as a deeply embedded strategic consultant. They do not rely on active job boards. They proactively source passive, high-value candidates. And most importantly, they conduct rigorous, immersive, technical, linguistic, and cultural validations that are hyperspecific to the industry's unique operational demands. One provider sells you an illusion of speed. The other provides engineered, guaranteed integration.
Beautifully summarized. Moving to question number 2 from the community. Why is competing on recruitment price so dangerous for tech and finance companies? We hammered this, but let's give the definitive answer.
It is dangerous because in the talent acquisition market, you get exactly what you pay for. Providers who artificially slash their rates to win contracts simply cannot afford the specialized infrastructure, the proprietary assessment tools, the expert human recruiters, or the extensive time required to properly vet complex candidates.
Right. You lose the quality.
When a hiring manager skips validation to save a few dollars upfront on an agency fee, it inevitably, mathematically leads to high turnover, severe cultural disruption, and massive unquantifiable operational risks. You are essentially integrating unverified, potentially destructive talent directly into your critical business infrastructure.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is. The true long-term financial cost of a bad hire infinitely outweighs the short-term savings on a discounted generic agency fee.
The ultimate false economy. A discount rate for a massive liability. Okay, final community question to bring it home. We talked about global arbitrage and the massive trend of LATAM nearshore talent. How is English proficiency actually accurately measured for this specific talent pool to ensure success?
The industry must completely move past standardized multiple-choice written tests. They are completely insufficient for predicting success in complex, high-stakes U.S. business environments.
So what's the alternative?
Specialized firms evaluate English through situational, immersive, high-pressure interviews. They are not checking grammar. They are assessing a candidate's practical ability to articulate complex technical concepts, to negotiate aggressive pushback from stakeholders, and to defend their ideas in real-time conversational English under significant emotional pressure. It is entirely about practical, frictionless fluency, not textbook memorization.
So what does this all mean? We've journeyed deep into the labyrinth. We have seen the spectacular financial failures of the keyword trap. We've exposed the false economy of cheap talent. And we've explored the intense simulation-based mechanics of true validation. And before we close out this deep dive, there is a provocative thought that I cannot shake. Something that builds on everything we've just discussed, but points directly toward the future of how companies will operate.
What is it? Let's hear it.
If the era of trusting a well-formatted PDF is truly completely over, and true talent acquisition now requires simulating future crises, mapping deep psychological profiles, and understanding invisible cultural motivators, are we rapidly approaching a future where a company's greatest competitive advantage isn't their proprietary software or their massive financial backing or their marketing budget, but simply their internal ability to accurately predict human behavior under extreme pressure?
Wow.
If you can build a team where you mathematically know exactly how they will react to a crisis before the crisis ever even happens, aren't you essentially building an invincible company? That is something for you to mull over as you navigate your own hiring decisions and your own career path.
A fascinating and highly probable future. The companies that master human prediction will own the market.
This was Next Gen Tech, Talent and Trends.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation where knowledge becomes direction.
I hope this episode offered you a useful pause, a boost of inspiration, or even a starting point for what's ahead.
We hope to have left you with ideas, questions, and most importantly, the drive to keep building your path in the world of technology and talent.
Leave us a comment, share this with your team, and help us keep growing the conversation.
Follow us on social media at Sequoia Connect. And remember, the future doesn't just happen, it's built with talent, technology, and purpose.
We are Silva, and we'll catch you in the next episode.